Hey everyone! Today I'm going to be teaching Logic for absolute beginners, so if you're new to this or every time you get in Logic you get freaked out, then this video is for you. Since I can't possibly teach you everything there is to know about Logic in a single video, I've decided to just pick 4 topics that'll give you a lot of value as a beginner and help you get up and running really quickly. First and foremost, I'm going to talk about just the UI, the layout, the navigation, kind of where stuff is, how you can find stuff. From there, I'm going to show you how to create and use 3 different kinds of tracks and why you might want to use one instead of the other. I'm also going to show you how to add basic plugins like EQ and compression, and then I'm going to show you how to export your whole project so that you can get a WAV or an MP3. So if you haven't already, please make sure you like and subscribe, and I'm going to get started. So I have a brand new Logic file. There's hardly anything going on here, and I'm just going to take a couple minutes to talk about the layout, kind of explain all the things so you understand what like all of this up here is. So up at the top here in the light gray, this is called the control bar, and this is going to handle all of your navigation within the session, viewing of different windows. All of your project information is right up here in the middle. Kind of all your big move stuff is going to be up here in the top. And then on the left here, these are your tracks. So a track can hold anything from audio to MIDI, even a virtual drummer. Tracks are basically lanes or little storage facilities for all of the content in your session. One thing I definitely recommend you do right away is click this little question mark because it's going to open the quick help box. And then this box is going to pop up, and whatever you hover your mouse over, it's going to give you kind of a little rundown of what that is. So I see a play button here. If I go over this, it says play button, start playback from the playhead position. And then it's like, okay, what's the playhead? Well, this thing right here is the playhead. You move your mouse over it, it says indicates the playback position. So I would definitely just have that open. You can put it somewhere down at the bottom of your screen, out of the way, just for you to reference as you go, because there's no way I'm going to be able to explain every little thing, every little button. So I want to give you the tools to learn things on your own as you go. So I'm going to start up here at the very top left and kind of work my way across and explain what some of the buttons do and how you can exist better. This very first thing right here that looks like a drawer, this is the library. And so when you click this, it's going to open up a side panel, and this is going to house like patches and settings and things that you can apply to your tracks. So it's kind of a library of stuff that's already set up that you can tap into to get up and running quicker. The library is going to show patches that are compatible with whatever track you have selected. So later in the video, when I'm talking about types of tracks, the library will actually show different patches. So if you're working with MIDI, the library is going to show patches you can use for MIDI. If you're working with audio, for example, so if you go to voice and you just want like a classic vocal, you can click that and then it turns your track here to classic vocal. And now there's settings and things that have been applied to it, and I'll show you how to find all that later, but that's what the library does. Undo works in this program just like any other program, so if I want to undo doing that, just hit Command Z, and then we're back to our regular audio one. So you can click that button again to close it. This next one, the I button, this is the inspector panel. So when you hit this, you're going to get another little pop out. You can close these and get out of here. The inspector window shows you a detailed view of the track you have selected. So right now we have audio 1 selected. So this is telling us all the information about audio 1, from what setting we have, to all the EQ and compression, to the input, to any other audio effects, sends, output routing. You can go super deep in this inspector window, but I like to use it just to view whatever track I have selected. You also get a nice meter and volume knob right here, as well as a pan knob. So it's just a nice way to see what's going on. The other cool thing the inspector does is it shows you not only the track you have selected, but where that track is going. So this particular audio 1, you can see right here on the output slot that this is going to the stereo out. And so it also pulls up the stereo out for us there. If for whatever reason this wasn't going to the stereo out, then it would show us instead the track where it's going. So whatever track it's going to show us there. Moving on, this button here, if you want to be overwhelmed with more buttons, you can hit it and it's going to show you all these other things that you can do. I'll be honest with you, I've never once opened this up when using Logic. Everything that's in here you can get to from other places, so you don't need to stress out if you don't want to learn this. But basically, this is just additional tools. It's called the toolbar, and if you right click, you can customize it with whatever else you want. But for starting out, I would recommend just not using it because it is more to wrap your head around. The next button, this little knob with the dots, this is the smart control window, and smart controls automatically map to certain parameters in your plugins on the track. So for example, I'm gonna go back to the library and go to voice, and let's do classic vocal. Okay, so now you see that our smart controls have populated with a bunch of different stuff that's actually happening on our channel strip. So if you're not like an audio nerd and you don't want to dive super deep into settings, just pull up a patch and use the smart controls because you have like a stripped back, easier to use set of features. Now you can see we can quickly access the compression, the EQ, an amount to echo, and then we also have a plate and a spring reverb right there. So we could really dial in this vocal without going any deeper. The next button is kind of some lines with dots on it, and this is the mixer window. So if you click this, it'll open up huge mixer, and for some of you this might be like, oh thank goodness, this is what Pro Tools has, and for others you're like, oh no, there's like a lot more on the screen. So this is basically a audio console or soundboard format and look at all the channels that are in your workspace. So everything that's up here is represented down in the mixer, but sometimes there's things in the mixer that don't show up in your workspace. For example, we have this large plate reverb here that doesn't show up in our workspace. We also have our stereo output, our main output, and then a master volume control here. Something to be aware of, that just because you see it in the mixer doesn't necessarily mean it's going to show up in your workspace. The mixer window is great for when you're actually mixing or if you need to get into the nitty-gritty of how your project sounds, but you can definitely get by without going in here if you don't want to super deep dive. I could do a whole separate video on the mixer, and I probably should, so let me know in the comments if you're interested in that, or if you're interested in a more in-depth tutorial in general. But that's what this window is. If it's up and you're like, oh geez, I can't see my workspace, just click up here to toggle it off. Don't panic. The next one is the little scissors. So this is the editor window, and as this does apply to audio, it works better with MIDI. Again, that's a super deep dive topic, but that's what that is. If you need to make adjustments to your MIDI or to your audio, like at a granular level, you can open up the editor and do so that way. Moving on, our next batch of controls here. Some of these should be a relief to you because they look like regular buttons, stuff you'd recognize. So this is the rewind button. It's just gonna rewind you a little bit. This is the forward button. It's gonna move you forward. And you can see as I'm clicking this little thing right here is moving. So this is the playhead. The playhead is basically where in the song you are. So, you know, if you're watching a YouTube video and you pause it, don't pause this one, keep watching it. But you pause your video, it's like, okay, you're at 33 seconds. That's what the playhead is. It's just where you're at in this content that you're making. The next button is a hybrid button. It'll stop and take you back to the beginning. So if you're stopped, it takes you back to the very beginning. And then if you're playing, which is the next button, play, it'll stop you. So that's a cool one because if you're playing and then you want to go back to the beginning, just double click the stop button and you go right back to the beginning. You can also control these with space. So space to play, space to stop, and then return on a Mac takes you back to the beginning. Enter takes you back to the beginning and hits play. So that's a fun one to know. Next is the big red button. This is the record button. Depending on what tracks you have selected in your workspace will affect what is recording when you hit record. So I'll show you how to deep dive more into that in a little bit. The next button is these two little arrows. This is the cycle region. So when you turn it on, it's gonna give you this yellow bar. And the yellow bar basically tells the playhead, hey, just keep looping this section. Just cycle through it, don't move on. And you can drag the whole cycle range around, so as a whole, or you can shorten the sides, or if you stay in this path, you can click wherever else you want and just drag it and make a new one. So I'll just show you what it does real quick, and I'll put it between measure 1 and 2 here and hit space to play. And it's gonna go it's going to mind its business, and when it gets to the end, it's just going to bounce back. So if you're working on a specific section of a song or podcast or whatever you're doing, you can put the cycle range on there, just let it play and keep looping. The next thing here is this middle section. So this is the display, and this has kind of all the important information about your session. So if you need to change your tempo, that's right there. You can change your time signature, the key of your song, and it even shows you the playhead position, like, oh, are you at measure 3, beat 1? If there's something you need to see about your project that is not up here, you can click this down arrow. And so like beats and project large, for instance, is a little bit bigger. It shows you a little more information. You can go to beats and time. So it'll show you, beats and time. I like custom because it shows you whatever you want. You can actually right click up here to customize control bar and display, and actually customize not only just the display, but everything you're seeing up top. I just wanted to mention that. I wouldn't recommend changing anything until you come across something you need. But if you need to look for something, this is a good place to start. It has a lot of different things in it that you can use. Moving on, I don't remember if this is here by default or if I put it here, but this is a tuner. I record a lot of guitars, so it's nice to be able to have a tuner right there. You can just click it and then it's gonna tune whatever audio track you have selected. So if you're recording a guitar or a bass, great, you've got a tuner right there. I ended up getting rid of a couple things that I don't ever use, and I didn't want to explain them because I don't know what they do. So this 1, 2, 3, 4 right here, this is the count in. So if I hit record right now, it's actually going to back up a whole measure and give me a 1, 2, 3, 4 with the click before it comes in. So I'm gonna put the playhead on measure 3, and when I hit play, it's gonna back up a whole measure and give me 4 counts of click before it comes in. So here's what that sounds like. And now it's in. If it's off, so I'll turn it off, I have my playhead on measure 5 and hit record, it just immediately starts right at measure 5. So that's what that does. The next button here is the metronome. So if this is off, not lit up, you're not gonna hear the metronome. If this is on, you're gonna hear the click with your tempo. If you're doing any like music related stuff, you'll probably want the click. If you're just recording a podcast or something, just turn it off. This right here is your master volume for your whole project. If you don't want to reach to your headphones or your speakers or interface or whatever to turn your project up and down, you can adjust it right here on the master, so that's helpful. These over here on the right are another set of pop-out windows like over here on the left. So if you click this, this is the event window. I rarely come in here, but it's basically every single thing that's in your project. All your files in your project, all the regions and all that kind of stuff, they populate here, and you can go through and change stuff. You also have all your markers, all your tempo events, all your time signatures. So if you have like a tempo change, for instance, that'll show up in the tempo window. I wouldn't say basic stuff. That's pretty complex and I never go in there, but that's what that is. You can close it by clicking up there. This next one, this is just the notepad. Click the little thing and it types stuff here. So that's helpful. Maybe you have lyrics or something, you can put that there, or you can put your show notes there, Logic for Beginners, and then see it all right there. If you click over to the track, it's just track specific, or you can have your project-wide one. Click there to close it. You can exit out of the font thing. So this next one right here is the loop browser, and this is all of the content that came included with Apple. So like drum loops, instrument loops, just a bunch of stuff. They might even have sound effects. Sound effects. So definitely fun stuff to dig through if you're new. Like it came with so much extra content, and there's a good browser. So like if you want a piano and you want a jazz piano, and you can take any of this and just drag it in there to use it. And you can either drag it to a track you have or drag it in the empty space and it'll create a new track for you. So now we've got some jazz piano. Next, I'll close that one. The very next one, I like this one a lot. It's just the browser, just a general browser. So this will show you all the audio files in your project, but you can also click over to all files and just get any file that's on your computer. So if you have like a podcast intro in a folder, like in your music somewhere, you can go find it and then just click and drag and put it in there. So if you wanted to use that, you could make a folder on your desktop called like Logic Assets, and then it's really easy to find it in here, and you always have the same stuff for your project. Okay, most of this next bar I'm not going to touch on because it's a little more advanced. I did want to mention a couple things over here though. So this right here is just going to zoom in on your waveforms. So if you have anything recorded and you're having trouble seeing it, you can press it and it just makes it bigger. And I know it might look like it's louder, but it does not make it any louder, just makes it bigger. This one here is going to expand your tracks vertically until they take up the whole screen. Or shrink. Like if you have a ton of tracks and can't see them all, you press this, and now your tracks take up the whole screen regardless of how big they were. And click it again to undo it. Same thing here. This is just going to zoom in to show you all your regions. And then these are manual zooms right here. So if you want to make your tracks zoom in and out, that's really helpful to know when you're first starting. These two buttons you don't need to know, but I'm going to tell you in case your cursor changes and you need to figure stuff out. A couple other things on this layer I want to mention. These two right here are going to be mouse clicks. So on the very left, I'd recommend always leaving this on pointer tool, but this is your mouse. Like, what does your mouse do? So if you're on erase, then when you click a region, you're just going to erase it. So leave that on pointer. But if your pointer ever doesn't look like a pointer, odds are this might have gotten changed. And so just so you know, the other one on the right, this is the command click. So you have a second tool on command click. I almost always leave mine on marquee, but you can definitely play around with that if you want something else. This right here is called catch playhead. When your playhead's moving, it's just going to move the screen to follow the playhead like it just did. I usually prefer that off because I just like to move around myself, but whatever you want to do, now you're informed. That was a big section, so thank you for sticking it out there. Now I'm going to talk about tracks and kind of what the different tracks mean. So far, you've only seen an audio track, and I'll show you how to add more. You can either hit this plus button here, that'll bring up the track window, or you can go up to track, and you've got specific track types here, or if you hit new tracks ... it'll give you that same new track window. So for now, I'm going to create an audio track, so make sure that's selected and hit create. And that's just the basics of how you create an audio track. To use an audio track, I almost always keep this open so I can see what's going on. Say you're doing a podcast, you have a simple mic plugged in to your audio interface. You're going to want to make sure right here, this is your input setting. You're going to want to make sure this is set to wherever your mic is plugged on your interface. So, you know, for me, my mic is in input 1, so make sure that you have input 1 checked there. After that, there's two other things you need to note, and it's this R and the I. If you don't see either of these, you can right click and go to track header components, and you can get rid of the record enable and get rid of the input. So if it looks like this, just right click, go down here, turn those back on. I don't know why you wouldn't want those. Like, this is a recording program. You should see the recording button. If you want to hear what's happening, you can click this I button. And so now we can see going to our stereo out is sound, and probably in the recording as well, there's sound. So you hear what's going on. That's called input monitoring. And then the R button tells Logic, hey, when I hit record, include this channel. If you don't have record enable turned on, then whatever channel you have selected will actually record for you. But if you want to record multiple channels, say you have a couple different mics, you need to make sure you actually hit the R button. I'm going to hit my R button. I'm ready to record now. I'm going to hit record. You can also just hit R on your keyboard and that'll do it for you. So now I have recorded. You can see some waveforms there. When I'm done, hit the space bar, and now you have a recording. So that's audio track. The next type of track is called an instrument track, or software instrument track. So I'll go to new tracks again, hit software instrument, and this is one of the places where Logic shines above other DAWs, in my opinion, is their use of software instruments. So now that we've got that software instrument, now you've got it selected, you can either add an instrument right here where it says instrument, and you can go, Logic has a ton of stuff bundled in, synths, drums, you name it, or you can go to the library tab here and go pick a specific thing. So let's do a keyboard. No, how about a piano? And the Steinway grand piano is a good one. And now it's loaded that in there already. It's good to go. And if you have a MIDI keyboard hooked up, you can go ahead and play and you have piano. I just did something and I want to explain it. So the M and the S, M is for mute. So if M is selected, it's going to gray out the track and you're not going to hear it on playback. And then S is the opposite. S is for solo. And when that's selected, you only hear the stuff that's soloed. So we have a piano. I'm going to pick a spot with the playhead and then go ahead and hit R to record. And that's going. And it's going to look weird because you don't actually see it making a region until you start playing. So now I've recorded a piano. And all of these regions that populate here, these are called regions, anything in the workspace. You can drag them around, just click and drag. You can move them up and down to different channels, different tracks. The third and final kind of track, and this is going to be super helpful for anyone writing music or making beats. If you go to track, drummer track, so a lot of stuff pops up when you click this. The first thing you notice is that the library has opened, but now instead of presets, you got a bunch of these people like Kyle, and Kyle can play drums for you. So the Logic drummer is, I don't want to say AI because it's not AI, but it's an adaptive drummer. So when you create a drummer region, it gave us one automatically. This is going to play a drum beat just right out of the gate. So there's the drum beat. Pretty cool. And these regions, same as others, you can move them around and do whatever you need. And so, yeah, in the library, you've got a bunch of different genres. Each genre has a bunch of drummers. You even have electronic drummers. So if you want like dubstep, if that's still a thing, you can have dubstep drums. It's a crazy versatile tool. And then if you don't like how the drums sound, you can change the drum set that drummer is using. Right down here, you've got a ton of options. You can see also that your editor down here, this is the editor, that thing I showed you earlier. So you have beat presets all the way on the left, and this is like gonna completely change the drums that are there. Let me go back to Kyle. He's a tried and true. So Kyle can play all these different beats, right? Crash the Party, Echo Park, whatever, and you can see it's changing the drum groove. So here's Golden State, right? Here's Half Pipe. It's a creative playground for drums. Then you'll see this little XY pad here. And wherever you move this dot, in terms of simple, soft, complex, or loud. So if you move it up, it's gonna get louder, he's gonna get more intense. If you pull it down, you're saying, hey Kyle, be quiet, play softer. If you move to the left, you're gonna get more simple, so it gets stripped back. And then if you go complex, he's way too busy. And then in here, you can actually click on different parts of the drum set to have the drummer play or not play those drums. And then in addition, you have this little toggle right here that gives you a bunch of different kick and snare patterns. This is crazy. I don't know any other DAWs that do this kind of thing. Definitely if you're starting out or like demoing a song from scratch, put the drummer in there. It's super helpful and it'll get you up and running a lot faster. That's our 3 track types, how to use them. I also want to mention how to adjust regions that are in here because you're not stuck with the size regions you have. So when you move your cursor to the very edge of a region, you're gonna get this little thing. I don't know what it looks like. A bracket with 2 arrows on it. If you pull this, it'll actually do a length change and just make your region bigger. You can also make it smaller. So that's really helpful for making things the right size. But you gotta be careful because if you move up, this turns it into a loop. So if you pull here, it's actually going to repeat the whole first 8 bars. And I went in my settings and changed it so that when I make it a loop, it's like a slightly different shade of color. Just is mentally better for me on doing that. If you want to learn how to do that or learn about any other Logic settings, I have a whole video I'll put up top and you can check it out. It'll also be down in the description, but that's a loop. And you can loop audio regions as well. And you can also loop MIDI regions. So just make sure when you're going to grab it, you know, this is the loop, that's the extend or shorten. The front only has the extend. So something to be aware of. I know like when I was starting, I was like, I tried to make this shorter, but now it's playing for the entire song. So that's what those do. Next, I want to talk about my favorite thing, and that's adding plugins. So we're going to go back to the mixer, and the hotkey for this is X. So you hit that, you go back to the mixer, and now you'll see there's significantly more going on here. This looks a lot crazier than it was, so I'm going to actually go ahead and get rid of a lot of our experiments and go ahead and strip it back to just a regular thing here. So let me go back to the mixer. Now it's a lot more manageable. You only have this thing. We have our snaps or whatever this was, and we want to EQ that. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can either click right here where it says EQ, and this is going to automatically give you a channel EQ plugin right here. So when they're in here, they're just representations of what's happening. But if you click it, you can actually see what's going on. And I'm not gonna teach you how to EQ in this video, that's a whole nother thing. But that's how you can get to the EQ. You can click and drag, move stuff around. It's awesome. You can hit the X up here to close it. You can also hit this to turn on and off that whole plugin. You can move these around if you click in the middle. So say you want the EQ to happen second, like you want something to happen before it. You can move them around. You can click here as well to turn them on and off. And then you can hit these arrows here to open the plugin menu, and then you can add whatever you want. If you have third-party plugins, this is where you'll find them. This is how you add them in. You can also add a compressor. If you see right here where it says gain reduction, if you click there, it's gonna add a compressor to your channel as well. And same rules apply. You can click to open it up, turn it on and off. You can pick a different thing. That's how you plug in. Let's say that this noise I made is the best sounding thing you've ever heard, and you want to export it because you want to show all your friends on SoundCloud this amazing noise that you made. There's a couple ways to do this, and the important thing is you want to make sure you tell Logic what to export before you go into the export screen, because once you're in there, you have to exit out to go back. So I like to use the cycle range, so go ahead and click to turn on the cycle range and just drag this. Make sure the beginning is where you want your track to start, and drag the end to where you want your track to end. So now when you export, it's gonna automatically export where your cycle range is. If you don't wanna do it that way, you can also click the regions you want to export, and it should set that as the length. Once you've got it how you want, you can come down here in your mixer or in your info panel if it's on the stereo out, and click the BNC button, that stands for bounce. Or you can hit Command B, that's how I like to do it. So you get this screen and you have different options for exports, you know, MP3 or PCM, like lossless. You can do an MP4, a few different options. So once you get what you want selected, make sure you check all the boxes. You can come down here and check your start and your end point. So this is saying the start is at measure 1, beat 1, blah, 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 right? So that's correct, measure 1, beat 1. And then the end is at measure 5, beat 2, and some change. So measure 5 right here, beat 2, and a little bit more. So that's correct. Normalize will actually make your project louder or softer, so there's no clipping. All of this stuff, you set it how you want. I've also done an in-depth tutorial on exporting, so you can check that out if you want. Then when you're done, hit OK. It's gonna ask where you wanna put it if you haven't saved your session. So I'll just put it on the desktop, and I'll call it my noise. And then go ahead and bounce. And then it's super quick because it was super small. And then you can go to your desktop and you have files there now. Desktop, my noise, wave, and MP3. That's how you do that. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video helped you learn a lot more about Logic. If you still have specific questions about topics, please let me know in the comments and I'll be happy to make a follow-up video or a more in-depth tutorial. I wish I could have covered more on this video, but it's getting lengthy as it is, and so I just hope I was able to provide value to you with what I did explain. Thanks again for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe.